This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Harvest is getting closer across the Corn Belt, and producers are developing their expectations for their yield. Hello, folks. Welcome to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson here in the studio this week as Max Armstrong is out on the road. He's traveling the states, getting ready for the Half Century of Progress show and, of course, the Farm Progress show coming at the end of this month. And this past week, he spent a little bit of time in the state of Missouri and has brought us an update on what the crops look like in the Show Me State.
Then we thought we would get a report on crops and other things from the Missouri Director of Agriculture. Chris Chin joins us from the state of Missouri. She's the Director of Agriculture in the Show Me State. Chris, we've been out looking at crops. We've been in a wide-ranging area. In the past month, I've been from down around Perryville and Cape Girardeau in that region. Then I was up around Clarksdale and St. Joe in the past week. Unless there's something that's amiss in between, you've got some pretty good crops this year.
We do. We're really excited about that. You know, unless you had a cornfield or a bean field that got hit by those rains in June, where you had over a foot of rain come in a short period of time, your fields are looking really good right now in the state of Missouri, and we're really excited about that. We're on track to have 171 bushel per acre corn, which is our second highest on record. And so most guys are really excited about their corn crop this year.
One beef producer in the southwest part of Missouri a few weeks ago said, yeah, it's a little bit tough for us to harvest forage here, to take up hay, but I don't think he was complaining too much about it.
You know, that is true. On our livestock side, if you own livestock right now, these higher corn prices and bean meal prices, they're not exactly exciting our livestock guys as much as they are our row crop guys. But luckily, the hog numbers and the cattle numbers are kind of creeping up on what they're receiving for their animals. So we're hoping that trend continues so that they can be profitable as well.
And a full pond sure looks a lot better than one that doesn't have much water in it, doesn't it?
You're exactly right. You know, we've been at the state fair before for years where we had droughts that our farmers and ranchers were dealing with. And it's just a pretty depressing time to be at the state fair when that's happening. And this year we're at the Missouri State Fair right now. And our farmers and our ranchers, they're all smiling. Their ponds are full, as you said. They have a good hay crop. Many of them were able to put up their hay without any rain interruptions, but not all of them. We still had quite a few farmers who struggled to get their hay put up this year, but there was a lot of hay, so they're happy about that.
Chris, we saw some of the images from Sedalia. It looks like folks are having a good time, but when you get a little one-on-one time, maybe away from the crowd a little bit with the producer, what are they telling you about? What's bothering them? What are they concerned about right now?
You know, a lot of our farmers and ranchers are still very concerned about the cap and trade. Even though it's not called cap and trade, a lot of the farmers around here are still talking about that. The carbon trading, they're uncertain about that. They don't understand it. It's very confusing, and it's a real concern for them. Another thing they're worried about is the future farm bill. You know, there's already talk about a farm bill, and they're very nervous about that because they see that there's been a lot of money spent, and they're nervous about what's going to be left for agriculture in the end. You know, we want to make sure that we still keep our crop insurance. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure the United States has an abundant and affordable food supply. They're also worried about trade. You know, China has been a great trading partner in the last few months, but once again, our Missouri farmers and ranchers are really nervous about putting all of our eggs in one basket. The inheritance tax and the stepped up in basis, I've heard an awful lot about that. They're very concerned about that as well, and not quite sure what this next Congress is going to be doing to that. And they're all worried about transitioning their farms to that next generation. And all of these tax implications are going to have a huge impact on that.
You know, we've heard that from a number of rural family businesses, not just farmers, but the businesses that serve them too, that are multi-generational. Farm equipment dealerships, grain elevator operators. I know there's quite a bit of concern about that. We are in the farm show season. Is it possible we'll see you at the Farm Progress show in a few days?
You will. We're excited to be there. I think it's going to be a great time. It looks like we're going to have some great weather for it. So we're excited to talk with our counterparts in other states and see what they're hearing from their farmers and ranchers.
We'll look forward to seeing you there, Chris, in Decatur, Illinois.
Sounds great.
Chris Chin, Missouri's Director of Agriculture, joining us here this weekend. Mike?
As Max mentioned with Chris there, he was in Clarksdale, Missouri, and had a chance to catch up with farmer Bill Hayen about what his crop expectations look like as this harvest gets closer.
The crops overall look very well. In the geography in northwest Missouri that I cover, a little bit of very diverse. In that far northwest corner of Missouri, they were able to get in early and get both corn and soybeans planted, and so they're progressing at a little faster rate than you get into central Missouri, and we've had some big rain events throughout the season, some 10+ inches of rain, which caused a lot of replanting. So there are some situations where some crops are behind. We've had some crops that have been destroyed with the flood and with the weather, and we've had some wind events. And so overall, I would think, and again, that northwest Missouri, they're progressing really well, and they've got a good crop. And we've got a really good crop everywhere, but some of it's behind. You know, it's lagging a little bit, and so we're hopeful that Jack Frost holds off, you know, a little extra time.
Well, thanks, Max and Bill, for that update on the crops there in Missouri. Now it's time to look a little more big picture and talk markets. Our good friend Dwayne Bossy from Bolt Marketing is joining us. And Dwayne, let's talk about this corn market first. We are starting to get perhaps a little better feel on what the expected yield might be when those combines start rolling here next month. What's your take on how is this going to trade from here until we start getting verified yield reports from the combine?
Yeah, no, you're right, Mike. You know, as USDA prints more, you know, the reports, the August report came out now, September will be out in the field. I think we're getting a better handle of the supply situation. And as you get to the end of the month of August, the weather season kind of ends as well, too. It's really too late to hurt the corn crop, knock on wood. Now, I say that now, we'll have a frost warning next week. But so then the market looks at kind of a nasty seasonal tendency where it tends to prod lower and try to find a harvest low before we start trading demand next year.
As you're taking a look at these charts, and we anticipate that seasonal harvest low as growers start to market right off the combine, Dwayne, what's your risk perception here in the corn market? How low can that December go, given the fact that we do still have pretty strong demand out there?
You know, I would still call me a bear at December corn in this 560 area plus. I don't think we have to be above that. I'm not as much as a bear as I was maybe a month ago. The August report did show lower yields than I anticipated, I guess, but I really like the yields when I look at the state-by-state breakdown. So I guess I'm going to say the harvest low is going to be higher than I once thought. A month ago, I would have told you 450 looks like a good place. Now, I mean, anything under 550, I think you're going to find some support, but we have to remember that that'll actually depend on the funds where the harvest lows are made at. You know, if the funds who are long right now just want to exit positions due to COVID or any outside influences, we still got that gap down at 480. It's possible, but I'd say around that 525 is a support area I'd watch very closely.
All right, so there might be as much as perhaps 50 cents of risk here in this corn market over the next month. With that being the case, if growers are going to have to be making some sales off the combines, should we be getting those on the books today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, get them on now. Like I said, I think the weather season and weather threat is kind of ending. You know, we don't have China in buying our new crop or old crop corn anymore. So I think there's no real bullish story for the corn market unless you want to just say that the yield, USDA is incorrect on the yield and they're going to drive it lower. But, you know, they printed the numbers. We got to trade them for now. I don't think there's any reason for the market to be above 575. So, yeah, sell it. It's great money.
Right, the money is there. And Dwayne, let's also talk about the wheat market. While we got you up there in the Dakotas, of course, you have been looking at the drought. You have been seeing the damage done to the spring wheat crop. How are we going to trade that as we continue to work our way deeper into the fall?
You know, sadly, I think we've already traded the drought and the damage that it did in North Dakota. USDA has North Dakota and South Dakota yields very close to about 25 bushels an acre for spring wheat. Well, that's some pretty low yields. And surprisingly, you know, it's hit or miss, just like every drought is. In my area, Northeast South Dakota, we actually had some guys say wheat yields were actually quite surprisingly. So I think what happened, I think Chicago wheat and Minneapolis has kind of traded their highs for now. I think we're going to follow the European market that really seems to have put a high in this week due to option expiration. Is probably going to grind a little bit lower and find some short-term demand before we go any higher here.
All right, we might see a little weakness in the wheat market until we start to see really what demand is going to shape up like given these prices.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think we need to prod down and find where demand is. Right now, I mean, the rally's been fun, but we are really expensive compared to the rest of the world as far as wheat export markets. So I think it'd be healthy for the market to go down, find where demand is, and then we can rally from there again.
All right. Well, we will talk more with Dwayne. We've got to dig into the soybean market as well as cattle when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're talking markets with Dwayne Bossy of Bolt Marketing. And Dwayne, we've got to talk about Chinese demand yet again in the soybean market. They have stepped back in. They have made some major purchases over the past, over 10 days now. What's your read on the Chinese demand situation?
Bullish and strong, and I think they don't have much of a choice, to be honest with you, Mike. I think despite a record crop out of Brazil, I think they're basically out of exportable soybeans. So that leaves Chinese with really no other choice than to come back and start buying our new crop beans. And they've done it, like you said, in a big way. Over 10 plus days of daily sales announcement. Weekly export sales were great this week. And I'm surprised, I've been somewhat bearish here the last couple of weeks or months, I should say, thinking we'll play a seasonal tendency and go down and find a harvest low. But one thing I kept telling everyone is once you see new crop export demand, then it's time to maybe start to get bullish. And geez, gotta be honest with you, Mike, it kind of happened sooner than I thought. So it's here. And for China, I think they're going to be hungry enough for this soybeans that I don't think the price is going to matter much. But then, like I said, there is a seasonal tendency. We could go down for a while, but man, it's great to see this export demand already in the market.
There is, and Dwayne, I'm kind of getting a sense of deja vu. It wasn't too far different. Almost a year ago in August, China started to step in a big way, making some purchases, and we saw that soybean market rally for the next 6 months. Is this another potential repeat of that scenario, especially given the dryness up in the Dakotas?
I think it is. As much as I can kind of say I like USDA's corn yield, and I don't think it'll adjust a lot, August, especially up in my area, soybean yield can still adjust quite a bit. Now, we're finally getting some much needed rains, and that's going to stop the bleeding. But USDA already has like North Dakota soybean yield at about 25 bushels an acre. So they have really cut that down due to the drought. And it is nasty up here, I got to be honest with you. But we can get rains this late and actually save the market or save the crop a little bit. So now, hopefully, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is this yield could be lower yet than USDA. And then if we have that much more demand, this soybean position, to answer your question, finally, yes, we could have a nice rally again in soybeans this winter.
If that's the case, how should growers handle their marketing, knowing that we're unsure of what's going to come out of the field quite yet, and we're unsure of what this Chinese demand picture might look at? Are you recommending options to folks?
Well, yeah, you can sure look at that. Some sort of re-ownership for soybeans is probably a good idea. No, I don't want to sound like, I had to duck to get my bullhorns in the office here this morning, because we are at 1350 plus beans, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with selling that and taking the profit. But a question I get this time of year a lot is, what should I store on the farm? And to be honest with you, Mike, I think I'd rather see someone let the corn go and store the beans. The beans are still, just like last year, a tighter situation, I think, than the corn market.
All right, better overall demand supply picture. Speaking of supply and demand pictures, Dwayne, we got to talk about this cattle market. We are seeing phenomenal beef demand continue. Where does the cattle market go from here?
I really like this cattle market right now. Like you said, the demand is great. I'm hearing rumors that restaurants are struggling to get meat supplies. I've heard that KFC this past week had to close a couple of restaurants because they ran out of chicken. I didn't even think it was possible for us to run out of chicken. But if demand is that strong, I really think the cash market's going to come soon. I think the cattle inventory is down. I think the herd is retracting. Really bullish the cattle market, but like all brokers, there's always a but, right? The caveat is that the outside markets, what if next week we get back to these markets and COVID is just ramped up and people are shutting down? That's the negative side of it. But from a fundamental standpoint, I think we got to go 130 plus easily in this cattle market. 130
plus in cattle. I know a lot of folks in that industry would be excited to see that. Dwayne Bossy, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Chad Colby's Look at Agriculture Technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
It's time to take a look at technology with our good friend Chad Colby, and he's also out on the road this week. But Chad wasn't always on the road in a car. Chad was on the road in a new combine from Fendt, and he brings us an update on their technology.
Like many of you, I love the opportunity to get behind the steering wheel of any piece of farm equipment. Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Colby, and this past week I had a unique opportunity to take a look at some of the new equipment coming from AGCO, specifically Fendt. And I talked to Eric Hensodia, the new CEO since January this year. And let me tell you, he's a really passionate guy about his farm equipment.
Well, I tell you what, this has been an awesome week. We got all of our Fendt dealers together. The buzz was going wild. We were talking about our new products. We've got the new R9 sprayer, high clearance, switching from liquid to dry real quickly. We've got the Ideal combine here, 10T. You can drive with a joystick, most high capacity combine in the market. We've got the Momentum planter here, most high tech contour following planter in the industry. And then we've got our full line of Fendt tractors, the best tractor in the world with the new Fendt One user interface. So we talked a lot about product, but we talked even more so about our farmers and the Fendt experience. That's product, dealer, and the overall package that they experience.
You know, Eric, one of the things you and I were talking about earlier today, you're a Midwestern guy. You're from Wisconsin.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, you've got the Maggie Show, you've got Farm Progress. You're going to get an opportunity, even yourself personally and your Fendt team, to talk to a lot of farmers. And for a lot of us, we're really looking forward to that.
Well, AGCO's intention is to be the most farmer-focused company in the industry. I came out of farming and I just love being with farmers. I'll be at Maggie Show myself with the team. I'll be at Farm Progress Show with the team. We'll be at the PTI farm. We just love being feet in the furrow with our farmers, understand their issues and how we can help them.
I think we all appreciate that hands-on approach. I'll tell you what, I certainly liked checking out some of this equipment firsthand myself. You could see all this equipment and so much more at the upcoming Farm Progress Show. This is going to be a year you're not going to want to miss.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. Incredible technology coming there from AGCO. And folks, it's incredible to get a chance to go to these farm shows. You can not only see the newest technology, you got a chance you might be able to meet the CEO. Farm Progress Show, of course, coming at the end of the month. Thanks for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. Each week, our friend Chad Colby sends us some updates of what the ag engineers are developing on the technology front in agriculture. And of course, ag engineers have been working hard in ag, building innovations for a very long time. One of the companies that was crucial in developing new tools for farmers and folks in construction and the trucking world is International Harvester. Well, there's a new book on that subject, and I'm joined this week by Paul Wallem. He recently wrote Successes and Industry Firsts, International Harvester from 1940 to 1980. Paul, thanks so much for coming on to tell us a little bit about your book. What prompted you to write this?
Mike, when I wrote the breakup, that was for to obtain opinions from dealers and customers of International Harvester through its history, because after all, without them, there'd been no company. I got such a huge response. The book was so well accepted. It's in its 4th printing. And so after that, people encouraged me to talk about the good sides instead of just the breakup.
And there are lots of good things that International Harvester did. You, of course, have a history with that company. Paul, when you think about writing this, what helped you pick 1940 as the start point? Because IH, of course, goes back a lot farther.
I found out that, like, very few people knew the military history of International Harvester, and it was huge in World War II. For example, they built tanks, trucks, lots of M1 rifles, and torpedoes for torpedo bombers. That was one of their biggest products. Few people knew about that, so I started with 40, and between 1940 and 1980, they were so innovative that seemed to be the magical 40 years.
they were innovative. We think about pictures that I've seen from that era, and there are a lot of red tractors out there. But of course, IH did more than just tractors. Paul, can you tell us a little bit about some of the other sectors you talk about in this book?
Oh, yes. The stationary engine business for International Harvester was huge through many years. But really, the truck and farm equipment divisions were the two stalwarts. They were the two anchors of International Harvester. Construction equipment came later and disappeared earlier, but those two were the big ones.
Man, you know, I think about everything you've written in here and how for some of us, for younger folks like me, it's been Case IH most of my entire life, and some of this earlier history has escaped me. So I was reading through and I had no idea that the Case IH cotton picker was voted one of the top 5 ag implements of all time, or at least in the 20th century. What other things did you discover while you were writing this book?
One thing I'll mention before somebody calls in, it was all an IH cotton picker, entirely IH, before Case ever got involved. But the other things, oh my, there were so many. For example, the first major manufacturer of a garden tractor, when the Harvester built the Cub Cadet, they expected 5,000 sales that first year in 1960. They sold 24,000, over 500,000 during the life of the Cadet, or the life before the dissolution. A special utility vehicles, SUVs. The Scout, International Scout, was the first. And that started in 1960, ran till 1980, and over 600,000 sold. So these were the biggies.
They certainly were. And then when you think about the tractors, and of course we've got a lot of viewers right now who are passionate about their red equipment, Paul. What did you learn, or what do you hope people take away from this book when you look at it from the agricultural side?
Probably this fact, red farm equipment is still one of the major dominant parts of world agriculture. And most of that came out of International Harvester side of Case IH. And so when you add that to the fact that the truck business today at Navistar is bigger than ever, the two anchors of the company are really, really going on forward.
They are. The roots that were planted from
Absolutely.
1940 to 1980 are continuing to provide fruit. And Paul, you will be interacting with with International Harvester enthusiasts at the Half Century of Progress show on the 27th of August. You're going to be there signing copies of the book.
Yes, on Friday I'll go down. I'll be there at Heritage Iron Tent from 10 o'clock on. You'll recognize it because Sherry Schaefer, the owner, publisher of Heritage Iron Magazine, will have her tent there with a yellow dancing man. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's full of air and it waves its arms. You won't miss it. We'll be there with Sherry.
And you'll be there, of course. Max Armstrong will be there. And of course, you and International Harvester have a long relationship with both Max and Orion Samuelson, which you touch on a little bit in the book.
Yeah, Orion has been my friend since 1960. That's sort of a long time ago. And ever since Max started, right off the first week he joined Orion, I met Max. So we've been friends for a long time.
Well, Paul, before we let you go, how can folks get their hands on a copy of Successes and Industry Firsts?
They'll be sold at a discount at Heritage Iron Tent at Half Century of Progress, or they can be ordered at 3 Point Inc.
And Paul, we should mention that's 3 Point Inc. 3 pointinc.com. Folks, this is a fantastic resource if you're interested in the history of International Harvester, or if you have friends or family members who are. Be sure to visit that link to pick up a copy, or if you're going to be in Rantoul next week for the Half Century of Progress show, Paul will be there on the 27th signing books.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Farm Progress Executive Director Willie Vogt is continuing his Dekalb Winning Has Roots tour to learn about corn breeding. That technology continues to improve, resulting in more vigorous hybrids for farmers across the world.
We're on the Winning Has Roots tour, and we traveled to Huxley, Iowa to catch up with Jeff Cernett, commercial development breeder for corn for Dekalb. One of the issues he discussed with us is that Dekalb works with a vast library of germplasm and goes through a lot of analysis before they bring things to market.
The germplasm pool is, it needs to be diverse. It needs to be diverse because when we actually breed, we're looking to exploit the differences between the pools. So if you have an international pool, for example, from the Philippines, that's tropical material. Well, we can't use tropical material in the U.S. We're on a temperate corn basis. So what we try to do is actually, we breed the tropical out of it, but we try to maintain characteristics like disease tolerance, insect tolerance, roots, stalks, and then of course yield, which is very important to our growers. So our goal in breeding is to make advancements each of the generations we do breeding. And it still takes quite a bit of time to do that, but we've got a lot of new tools that we use that we didn't have, even 10 years ago.
As Jeff explained, the company works with a vast amount of germplasm to bring products to market. Before you bring a product to market, you've got to test it. He explains the extensive testing program that they put their hybrids through, and it's intensive.
We do have multiple year traded testing. We test, as I say it, we test as we sell, which is good because the stability and performance is better when you test as what you sell. We used to do a lot of traded testing in a different way. We've always traded tested, but we're doing it much more extensively, multiple more environments, trying to get at performance over a broad area of geography, if you will. So we go back in the pipeline. We've got multiple traits, so the Smart Stacks hybrids perform against the most elite Smart Stacks checks we have in Dekalb. The Double Pro against the Double Pro, and the Tricepta against the Tricepta and the Double Pro, just to look at performance. We measure all the agronomic characteristics. We measure performance of the inbred lines themselves. How are they performing across different testers? That's called general combining ability. So there's a whole host of things that go into the performance testing.
Reporting from the Winning Has Roots Tour, I'm Willie Vogt with Farm Progress.
Thank you, Willie. And folks, that Winning Has Roots Tour will continue next week across the state of Illinois while the team makes its way down to Decatur for the Farm Progress Show.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
It's time to take a look at weather. Our Greg Solier is here in the house. And Greg, looking out at the Pacific Northwest, those wildfires have continued. That drought is still in place. Is there anything coming to relieve those folks?
You would have thought with that triple-digit heat and a cold front and a strong upper air system, you would have generated some meaningful moisture. Nope, just really fanned the fires with all the fuel out there. We do have a couple of more fronts on the maps and charts making their way from west to east. But in this corridor, we did tap into monsoon moisture last week, and boy, it was way too much all at once from especially Yellowstone on southward. But the rains were bountiful last week and a fair covering this week from the Canadian Prairie on southward. 1 to 3 last week. That will help, not necessarily with summer crops. Late in the week, that front moves on eastbound, little buckle, so we'll pick up some showers and thunderstorms across parts of the Dakotas, southern Canadian Prairie. Seasonal cool off for big sky country. Dry weather, comfortable weather, but ongoing dryness and drought in the Pacific Northwest. Farther south, the monsoon setup kind of weakening somewhat this week. It was substantial last week along with one of these cold fronts, and boy, there was runoff issues in this corridor all at once on the downpours. A couple of thunderstorms and seasonal heat and humidity central and southern plains. Pretty quiet except for the drought and the lack of water available across the valleys of California. A little change expected except for maybe an approaching front through the Bay Area, maybe a thunderstorm over the northern Sierra middle to late parts of the week. In absence of any widespread monsoon moisture, a couple of thunderstorms across the plains, and note some expanding dryness issues as well, Mike, into parts of Nebraska and Kansas.
Yeah, there certainly are. Is there going to be relief for those producers in the central part of the U.S.?
We think as the week wears on, some limited relief is anticipated. In the meantime, early in the week, delightful air mass builds through the Great Lakes, northern and central Corn Belt locales. Upstream, the next progressive weather system. Yeah, the weather systems are moving. That'll be good news. So for half century down there at Rantoul, we get a little bubble of some heat and humidity, and then showers and thunderstorms the back half, probably Friday, Saturday Saturday, delightful at Rantoul with temperatures 80 to 85 and a drop in humidity. But in the meantime, showers and thunderstorms line on this cold front for the middle to late ports of the week, and pretty good coverages over the northern and western Corn Belt where the drought continues on there. Limited monsoon moisture here early in the week over the southwestern section of the country. The tropics are quiet. Grace went into Old Mexico. And we'll talk about Fred in just a minute. The heat and humidity continues on, but a pretty sizable late summer cold front here, so the showers and thunderstorms do pick up late in the week over the southern plains. Maybe some lowering pressures across the Gulf of Mexico that bear watching late in the week as well.
Well, you mentioned Fred. Those remnants of Fred worked their way up the east coast. What is coming here in this next week?
Well, you can see it in the streams and rivers, 1 to 3, some spots 5 to 8 inches of rain running from northern New England and southward to the nation's capital last week. But we make drought improvement issues noted. That will be of good news in that part of the country. Less humid, very comfortable environs across much of the Corn Belt early in the week. A brief bubble of heat and humidity. Showers and thunderstorms, very beginning part of half century at Rantoul, and then we're in the clear with comfortable environs, and that moisture again will track into areas of the southeastern states and northeastern areas of New England as well, middle to late portions of the week. And speaking of the southeast, a little weak disturbance here of no concern. Things are drying out. Keep an eye on the streams and rivers across the Carolinas. A couple of thunderstorms in through Florida. Weather pattern as you get in through areas of the southern plains. A cool front for late summertime. A couple of thunderstorms on the increase from the Delta into the Carolinas. And again, lowering pressures noted in the western Gulf of Mexico late in the week.
Now, Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you.
Well, Greg, you mentioned next week the Half Century Show. The temperatures should be good, but what's the precipitation outlook?
I think maybe a one crack leftover deal and shot at maybe a couple of showers come Thursday morning there, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Rantoul, Illinois. Of course, this is the whole cumulative look at moisture for the entire week to come, by the way. So Thursday morning, then after that, it looks like drier air and rain-free environs at Rantoul for Friday and Saturday's get together. And then later on into the week, we'll get some showers and thunderstorms get going across the areas of the western Corn Belt. Good news here, more recharge for the Canadian Prairie. A couple of thunderstorms, not much of an impressive monsoon setup over the southwestern part of the country. A scant quarter to half Pacific Northwest, and much needed dry time coming off the remnants of Fred into the northeast and New England as the week wears on.
Well, and of course, your next week, August 30th, is the week of the Farm Progress Show. What could attendees expect?
At Decatur, Illinois, seasonal, normal, average temperatures, somewhere into the middle 80-degree range daytime, nights in the 60s. No real oppressive humidity, in weeks gone by, we've had these dew points off the charts, 60s and 70s, that plant material pumping through evapotranspiration, moisture back in the atmosphere. The heat over the southeastern part of the country across much of the plains and western states. We'll keep an eye on this. I think there may be a couple of cracks at moisture, but progressive, not all day rains, quick in and out stuff, but there's a tendency for more wet weather over the eastern and northern Corn Belt. We'll take that here, and maybe a tropical system over the southeastern part of the country. Back to dry time in the southwestern sections.
Now, how about the week of September 6th? What do you expect to see?
We saw that little wedge of cool air through the northern Great Lakes region. It is a trademark of La Nina for early season cold, Canadian Prairie, northern and eastern Corn Belt. And here it is, at least a drop in temperature, slower late season maturity, no frost or freeze. That'll be up here towards Hudson Bay, James Bay, the hot weather from the Ozarks back to the west and down to the south as well. And at least it is a progressive weather pattern. There's nothing probably much to harvest through the northern plains and scant through the northern Corn Belt. So we'll take the moisture here into the northeast of New England, normal over the southeastern part of the country. Watch the tropics, back to dry time to Texas and then the southwest.
Now that week of September 13th, anything jumping out at you?
From a temperature standpoint, well, it kind of looks like this. Readings a bit below average here. Late season crop growth development slowed just a bit. No frost or freeze concern. It does mount, though, earlier than usual with this La Nina setup getting going. Above average warm for the southeastern part of the country, normal for the plains, and the heat continues on from the divide on westward. The monsoon setup winds down quickly over the southwestern sections of the country. Dry time Oklahoma and Texas. Busy tropical pattern this part of the country, and a string of weather systems continue from the Canadian Prairie into the northeastern states with above average rainfall.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
I have to admit, I get a little bit nosy sometimes when the farmer affords me the opportunity to come into his machine shed. You never know what you'll see back in there. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You will have the opportunity to inspect the quality of those cabinets in person if you get to the Half Century of Progress at Iran Tool next week or the Farm Progress Show at Decatur the week after. They'll have cabinets there. You can pull on those drawers, feel how solid they are, lean up against those cabinets. If you can't get to those shows, go to the website storelock.com. Andy Capp, who farms at Clarksdale, Missouri, has a brand new combine he'll be putting in the field in just a few days. But back past that big green combine, we found this. It's an unstyled John Deere G, not just any unstyled. The last one John Deere made. They manufactured the G, I believe, from about 1937 to 1953, some 40,000 Gs altogether. But this one is unique because it was the last unstyled one. We hear Andy has some other green tractors around, old tractors. Maybe we can see those in a future visit at Andy Capp's place, Clarksdale, Missouri. Mark Stock is in now with his weekly report on what they are selling at Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark.
Well, Max, the August 25th online auction on BigIron.com features 2,615 items. Larry Kaniram is from Findlay, Illinois. They've got a Case IH 2366 combine. They've got a Case IH 2206 corn head and a 1020 platform head. They've got John Deere 8300 and 4850 mechanical front tractors, 3 two-wheel drive tractors, a John Deere 8200, John Deere 4020, and a 1950 Farmall H. They've got a Case IH 900 Series 12-row 30 planter, 2 grain trucks, as well as tillage equipment, grain carts, and augers. Greg and Kathy Shinist from Page, Nebraska will be selling 2 Case IH combines, a 7240 and a 7230. They've got 2 Drago corn heads. There are 2 J&M grain carts with tracks. They've got 3 Case IH mechanical front tractors, plus an STX 450 four-wheel drive tractor, plus tanker, trucks, grain trailers, and a lot more. The Danny Hall Estate Sale is also on August the 25th by McCool Junction, Nebraska. They've got a Klaus Lexion 760 combine. There's a Klaus 16-row 30 corn head, also selling a New Holland 8970 mechanical front tractor. There are 2 Challenger track tractors, plus they have a Great Plains Discovator mulch finisher and a Landau vertical tillage machine, 2 Kinsey planters. The sales are big, Max, and a lot of good equipment sells with no reserve on BigIron.com.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide. We stand for you.
This Week in Agribusiness, of course, is proud to continue our salute to FFA, and we are continuing to get to know the officer team for the state of Missouri. Joining us this week is Chris Ebbesmeyer. He is a state vice president in Missouri. Chris, thanks for taking the time to join us, and I've got to ask, what prompted you to get involved in FFA back at the very beginning?
So my whole entire involvement with the organization got started because of my older brother, Ben. He was the first in our family to actually be involved in the organization, and he, at his senior banquet, went ahead and willed his FFA jacket to me, and that was pretty much him saying, hey, you're going to be in this organization, and I am forever thankful for him doing that because obviously the organization has changed my life in such great ways, and so by him giving me that jacket, it was kind of a forceful involvement into the organization. But from there, our chapter activities just got me really involved along with the state activities. And so I just kind of got involved and continued to go from there.
That's fantastic. Your older brother looking out for you, pointing you in the right direction. Chris, as a state vice president here over this next year, what are you most excited about?
As far as this next year, I'm just really excited to go ahead and meet with those members from across our state and maybe from across the nation, and getting to work with them on a one-on-one basis, talk to them about different career goals that they might have or goals in life that they might have. I'm all about personal growth. And so even though I didn't grow up on an agriculture operation of any sort, I took the leadership side of the FFA organization. I really went into the public speaking and all those things. And so from there, I want to really help students grow personally.
That's fantastic, Chris. We wish you the best as This Week in Agribusiness salutes the FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
For this week, Samuelson Says, I would like to use a line frequently used by a friend of mine, the late Paul Harvey, who, when he didn't want to discuss world politics, would say, "Partly personal, please." That's a line that I would like to use, because I'm not going to have time to personally respond to every card and letter that I've received concerning my retirement. But do know that I read them, I read the emails, and I really do appreciate your kind words. One of the cards I received at a retirement party hosted by my wife Gloria just a few weeks ago is this one: the rules of retirement. Let me quote. Number 1, sleep in. Well, I'm doing that for sure. Number 2, laugh every day. Number 3, take a nap. Number 4, travel, or at least your little corner of the world. Number 5, relax, enjoy the little things. You worked hard, now play hard. And then the final rule of retirement, you make your own rules. Some good advice, and I'm doing all of them, I think, but I'm still sharing some thoughts and some time with you because I miss all of you, and I hope you miss me too. Thanks to the many people who attended the retirement party. Sorry we didn't have room to invite all of you, but we did our best. Stay well, be safe. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
The next 2 weeks are going to be busy if you're a farm show person, and we certainly are here at This Week in Agribusiness. Next week, of course, is the Half Century of Progress, and then it's the Farm Progress Show. Max, are you ready for the half century?
You bet we are ready, Mike, for the half century of progress. There's been this pent-up demand over the past 2 years, and what a privilege it is this year to be involved with the folks from Beck's Hybrids. Sonny Beck, Chief Executive Officer of Beck Superior Hybrids, joining us here on the broadcast this weekend. Sonny, I have to ask you first and foremost, how's the seed crop in the Eastern Corn Belt? It looks like crop conditions are pretty good.
Well, Max, first of all, I admire you so much for what you continue to do on radio and and everything you do for agriculture. So thank you. And yeah, we've had a pretty good seed crop going in Indiana and our Ohio location. Illinois is not too bad. It's a little dry right now, but corn can handle dry at the end. Soybeans looks like they could use another rain or two. But here we feel like we're about 7-8% ahead of our budget, which means our average crop for here in central Indiana. Overall, as we go to Iowa and so forth, they're more or less right on budget to a couple points ahead. So there's going to be enough seed. We don't have to worry about that.
One thing that occurs to us is the seed harvest is approaching rather rapidly. When do you think in most of your fields you'll begin the harvest?
Well, as far as field corn, that will be probably 10 days or so. As far as our seed corn, Max, our guys said we will get started next Tuesday already on some of the early hybrids that we plant early to get the dryer warmed up and to get your employees warmed up and any new training you need to do. So we'll start a couple of days before our field days start and then have to shut down for that. But that way we'll get going. After August 26th, it'll be full steam ahead.
We know you have an event with your customers in the coming week as the Half Century of Progress is getting underway. And then after the Half Century is the Farm Progress Show. You folks will be there too, won't you, Sonny?
Yes, sure will. Yes, sir.
One thing about the Half Century of Progress, and I've talked about this with some of the folks who work with you, it is such a great family event. And your heritage as a family company goes back a few decades. In fact, you have an old tractor yourself, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. The family's farm started here in 1901, so it's over 100 years old. But I have an F20. It's a 1938 model. My grandfather and father bought it in 1937. Happened to be the same year that they started the seed company here, and so on hybrid seed corn. And so yes, that I remember it's the first tractor I learned to drive on, and you can't have a smile big enough. The smile was on my face, the 5-year-old. When my grandfather, got off to open the gate to the field and says, "Okay, now you can drive it through." And boy, those memories, you just remember that forever, And of course, after that, there was no barring me. I could drive anything after that, So, yeah, it's fun being a farm kid.
It obviously got you off to a good start. Once again, we appreciate the involvement of X Hybrids in the Half Century of Progress. We appreciate you. Until we get to see you in person someday soon, take care of yourself, Sonny.
Hey, thanks, Max.
Mike, we sure look forward to seeing many of our friends at Rantoul.
There might be fewer folks growing up on a farm, but they can experience that magic that Sonny Beck talked about next week, Thursday through Sunday at the Half Century of Progress Show. Immediately hot on the heels is the Farm Progress Show, August 31st, September 1st and 2nd. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you here on This Week in Agribusiness.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by OMAX Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.